Welcome back. The Dig, a South African alternative music development agency, and Jazz Refreshed, a pioneering grassroots jazz organization, have launched a collaborative music exchange project, the AfroDiaspora Connection. The event aims to establish a cross-cultural music community between South Africa, the UK, and African diaspora communities. For more, we're now joined by Sifiso Gcabashe, who's the organizer from the Dig, and musician and performance artist Ntokozo Zwane. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Sifiso, perhaps let's begin with you in explaining the Dig, what it is about as an organization, and how it creates that alternative when it comes to producing music.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it. Yes, my name is Sifiso Gcabashe. Well, the Dig is a alternative music and collaborative agency / platform that we've been running for the past 5 years. And the idea is that to kind of create a visible community for, we always call it the alternative music and creative arts of the country. We've been able to branch into the continent, and now we're going beyond the continent, sort of accessing the AfroDiaspora community. But our sole purpose is existing to make sure that as much as there's main market music, which is constantly on radio and TV, we also want to make sure that the amazing talents of local creative artists, especially in the alternative scene, that you may not hear on radio regularly, that you may not hear or see on TV regularly, also have a place where they can exist, perform, and showcase themselves. And some of these artists are quite massive in the country, but they are not necessarily in the main market. But also, I think we see ourselves as an opportunity to say that South Africa is not one-dimensional. We believe South Africa and the continent itself, musically, should be seen as a multifaceted industry that offers variety, but also offers options. We also wanted to spend quite a lot of time in our business creating a space where audiences can go to where they want to access music from artists such as Ntokozo Zwane, Kujenga, Taninduli Ndabozulu, Zoe Mudeja, the Mandisi Kianchisi, all those artists that may not necessarily play regularly on main market.
And I want us to touch a little bit on that later on with regards to the impact that has on artists that are not on our everyday commercial radios, and what opportunities does it open up for them globally. Let's talk a little bit about the Afro Diaspora Connection. This is a collaboration with Jazz Refreshed. Just talk to us with regards to the objectives and the vision of this event.
Well, I mean, I think we've been working on the project for over 2.5 years. Jazz Refresh, which is based in the UK, are our partner, and the idea is that we want to build a visible and accessible touring circuit for international artists to be able to access the SADC region, but specifically South Africa, and also be able to take South African artists to the UK to also build audiences, but also perform in different communities and perform in different stages. I think when we were building the project, it took us quite a while to also not just treat it as a perform and shut up experience, but it was more about how can the artists get opportunity to perform, but also share an opportunity or have opportunities to share knowledge, experiences, collaborate with local artists as well. But also, whilst doing that, we also didn't just want it to be international artists are coming to the country, performing and leaving. So we've got quite an extensive program based on education, skills development, collaboration, studio time. So they'll be doing talks, workshops in different parts of the country. We are using this as a 3-year plan. So this is year 1. The idea is that we'll bring 2 UK artists, and this is Blue Light Beats and Camilla George, who are also Afro-diaspora artists or Black artists that are important for us, who are of African descent, and we want to make sure that there's that relationship between Black creatives as well as artists of the African diaspora of African descent, to constantly be aware of each other, share knowledge, share resources. And the idea though was that we didn't want it to just be about the artists coming from the UK. We wanted the artists coming from the UK to also experience, have an opportunity to share stages with our local artists. And I think what's important is that we didn't want to create a hierarchy of artists. We believe all these artists that are part of the project are equally as impressive. So that's why we've got our own Tandinduli, we've got Ntokozo Zulu, we also have Ntokozo Zwane, obviously, who's joining us, and Kujenga from the Cape Town part of the project. So on the 24th, we are doing Cape Town, and on 23rd and 24th, we'll be in Cape Town with Kujenga and Ntokozo Zwane and Blue Beats. And then on the 26th, we do a bit of a finale where we've got Siba Kapstad, we've got Tandinduli, Ndabo Zulu, Blue Beats, as well as Camilla George. And we've been fortunate enough to get quite a lot of support from creative agencies that are government linked, which has been really, really important to bring this project to life.
Very interesting. Ntokozo, let's perhaps bring you into this conversation. You're a performer, you're a musician, and quite often we hear musicians and performers speaking to us about the challenges that they face. And Sifiso mentioned some not getting the airplay on our local radio stations. How does an event such as this impact you in terms of exposing you to an international audience?
Okay. Firstly, thank you so much for having us. In speaking on the opportunity to get airplay, I think one of the really important things that I've had to do within my career in realizing the genre or the pocket of music that I'm in is really hone in on performing. In that way, I would have means to make a living and have an actual career from music. I think when you go into the commercial scene, you'll realize that it's very consumer based in that people kind of make what people or the masses would want to hear. And there are artists that create really beautiful work and really beautiful music that would find it hard to kind of appeal to the masses, so to speak. And in that, I think pockets or spaces and platforms like the Dig and like Jazz Refreshed, it really allows people to find a place to find that music that they need. I think what I would refer to it as is almost medicine music, right? And it's honestly one of those places where, or one of those platforms where we kind of are allowed to be human. That's the basis of it. I would assume is that we just get to come as we are and not have to necessarily appease the wants and needs of the many, but just be able to be intimate and very romantic, so to speak, about what we make. And these platforms are very important for artists like myself, like the Kuchengas of the world and other alternative artists.
And did the COVID-19 period have any impact in how you now create your music and find your business that is very different to how we knew the world before then?
I think one of the things that really, really helped for me specifically, I think it's important to also realize that these situations don't impact everyone the same way. And I am quite young in my craft. And so at the time when COVID had hit, I got the ability to go back home and go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, what is it that I really want to hone in on? And I got the time and the space and the comfort to really work on my songwriting, to really work on my performance skills, and not by necessarily going outside and performing, because that was obviously null and void. That was not an option. But I just got to kind of look inward, as opposed to what I was making before, for example, was very much a try to kind of appease the commercial space, which didn't work for me. And it's also one of those things where, yeah, these spaces, everyone finds their pocket. And for me, that time helped within finding my pocket and my niche. But I can imagine that for a lot of my colleagues, it was a rather tough time, and specifically performers, in that obviously it's not as frequent as we would love them, or venues didn't have capacity, which also impacts your pocket by nature of the business. And so, yeah, but also at the same time, we got to experience more music online, which was a positive side of things, I think.
Most certainly. And it takes me to my next question to Sifiso with regards to access to markets, because you spoke earlier on with regards to workshops and couch sessions that take place and just the education that happens, because a lot of the times with musicians, because they are artists, the business of things is taken care by other people. And in some instances, they do find themselves on the back end of knowing and understanding, and could find that their monies are channeled in other ways. How important is to have such sessions where artists are educated in the business of things?
Well, I think the most important thing, and just to sort of piggyback on the COVID conversation, is that COVID firstly forced artists to really think about their business and where they are within the chain of the business of music. As much as you're a performer, how else can you sustain yourself? I think for me, the most important approach with the AfroDiaspora project, or this project that we're currently working on, is that we wanted to not just be about performance. And I think that for a very long time, artists have just been pigeonholed into being performers and just get on stage, do what you do, and shut up. But I think what we are hoping for, and I think just before I get to that point, the most important thing to stress is that this is not an anti-mainstream commerciality conversation. It is more of there are multiple ways to skin the cat. So the commercial scene must also exist, but also the alternative scene also exists, and it can be also resourced. But I think within that resourcing of the alternative scene, there is an importance in understanding our independence and also making it commercially viable for ourselves. So the conversations, the workshops, and just the interaction between artists is for us a hope that artists are able to share knowledge. Artists are able to share of themselves with their audiences, to say, this is how I've been surviving, this is how I've been working. But also, not all of it is serious. It's really just to let artists be artists, and let artists that are in the country to really see South Africa not as this third world country, but as quite a very developed country that they can consistently come to for performance. They can come to build new audiences. So we want this to not just be a moment to say, come and educate and develop yourself, but we also want us to be seen as a global player within the global music, I'd say, industry. South Africa is one of the most developed countries when it comes to I think, in the continent and in the world, when it comes to the production of our events, the type of events we do, the artists that we have. And we're hoping by doing this project, we can begin to expose our artists to the global market and begin to have those trade exchanges. But I think the workshops, the talks, and all the things that we're doing are really just to build that culture of education and skills sharing and development within the alternative music scene.
So, Sifiso, how big is the appetite of the international market and the international community of South Africa's alternative offering?
It's quite massive, and I think it's massive purely because we work on it. We spend a lot of time. I travel quite a lot because of it, just advocating for the importance of South African artists being able to leave the country and access other markets. I mean, if you look at just Amapiano as a genre, that is currently the biggest moment South Africa has had musically in terms of just exporting our sound. But a lot of the guys that are on the lineup and the guys that we're booking for these shows are already signed to international labels. They've already released music internationally, and they're charting, and they actually are considered as world-class artists. But the difficulty is that how do we take the physical bodies of South Africa to be in those countries where they have built quite reputable audiences? And I think because depending on just availability of resources and maybe the lens itself, we've overlooked a lot of these artists that are performing in global platforms. If you look at an artist like Ntokozo Zwane, he's basically not even in the country 90% of the time because he's booked everywhere in the world. You've got guys like Bokani Daya who are signed to international labels. Dabo Zulu is also signed and released music internationally, and he's won awards. Tani Nduli as well. She just came back from Brazil. They are touring the world, and they're really, I would say, lifting the South African flag and really putting South African music on the map, we are hoping that through these projects, we're able to also shine a light on them and say, there are these people that are doing really amazing things. We can support them, but also let's also make sure that they have consistent performance spaces and audiences locally. And therefore, the Dig, companies like Jazz Refreshed, become that opportunity where we are consistently creating platforms for artists to be able to perform, expose themselves, and also keep building their audiences.
Most certainly. Lastly and very quickly, Ntokozo, on the 23rd and 24th in Cape Town, what can audiences expect from your performances?
The performances on the 23rd and 24th, one thing I know that looking at the lineup, what they can expect is a very immersive experience. What I like to say in my performances is that I'm not necessarily singing to the audience, but I'm singing with the audience. And yeah, I think looking at the likes of Kuchenga, who's also going to be playing, the beautiful band also from the city. So it's going to be a beautiful, very warm environment with stunning music, to say the least. And yeah, I think people should really come through and buy tickets on Quicket.
All right. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this evening. A very enlightening and interesting conversation with regards to alternative music. And certainly we are hoping that audiences will come out, enjoy, and also be educated in the process of being a part of this event. Thank you so much for your time. That was Sifiso Gcabashe, organizer from the Dig, and musician and performance artist Ntokozo Zwane.